Hello there, and welcome to the Outside Views weekly magazine about the politics of the European Union, the EU. New allegations have been made against former EU Vice President Eva Kaili, this time of fraud with EU budget funds. The European Public Prosecutor's Office in Luxembourg on Thursday applied for the immunity of Kaili and her Greek colleague Maria Spyraki, both members of the European Parliament, to be lifted. As stated in a statement by the Public Prosecutor's Office, it is about the suspicion of fraud to the detriment of the EU budget, in particular with regard to the remuneration of parliamentary staff. The Social Democrat MEP Kaili is already involved in a corruption scandal in the European Parliament and is therefore currently in custody in Belgium. In this case, the Greek and other suspects are accused of membership in a criminal organization, money laundering, and corruption. They are said to have been paid by the Gulf state of Qatar to represent their interests in the European Parliament. Qatar has, of course, denied the allegations. Last Friday, Kaili was arrested in Brussels for these allegations, as was her partner. According to Belgian judicial circles, searches found 150,000 euros in their shared apartment and another 750,000 on Kaili's father's. Because of the allegations of corruption, the EU Parliament dismissed the Greek politician as vice president on Tuesday. According to the European Public Prosecutor's Office, the new case, independent of the Qatar affair, goes back to an investigation by the EU fraud authority OLAF. It was therefore about the remuneration of the parliamentarians and in particular their employees. The other member of the European Parliament affected, Maria Spyraki, belongs to the Conservative Party camp. According to media reports, one of the suspects in custody in the corruption scandal surrounding the European Parliament confessed. The partner of the ousted Vice President of the European Parliament, Eva Kaili, has admitted to being part of an organization used by Qatar and Morocco to meddle in European affairs. That's what the newspapers Le Soir and La Repubblica reported on Thursday, citing investigative documents. The Belgian judiciary is investigating suspected corruption, money laundering, and influence from abroad in the vicinity of the European Parliament, as I said. 6 suspects have been arrested since Friday, 2 of whom have been released. Eva Kaili's detention date had to be postponed to next week. According to the report, Kaili's partner, previously an assistant in the office of an Italian MEP, accused former Italian MEP Pier Antonio Panzeri of being the head of the alleged organization. Both are still in custody. His own role was to manage cash, the statement said, according to the report. He went on to say that 2 MEPs had received money from Panzeri. Panzeri's lawyer replied to Le Soir and their request that he did not have this information. Le Soir and La Repubblica also reported that the investigations are aimed not only at the Gulf state of Qatar, but also at Morocco. In the European arrest warrant, which was issued for Panzeri's wife and daughter last week, Morocco is suspected of having paid political interventions with members of the European Parliament on behalf of Qatar and Morocco. The Moroccan Secret Service was also allegedly involved. As a consequence of the corruption scandal in the European Parliament, Parliament President Roberta Metsola announced far-reaching reforms on Thursday. These included a ban on all unofficial friendship groups, a review of compliance with their code of conduct, and a thorough review of their relations with third countries. That is what Metsola announced after a discussion with European leaders in Brussels. Metsola said she would personally direct the work on the reforms. The first results should be available in the new year. There will be no impunity, nothing will be swept under the carpet, there will be no business as usual, emphasized the Maltese. The allegations are a blow to everything that has been worked on for many years. It takes years to build trust and just a moment to break it, Metsola said. However, the top politician did not rule out that similar scandals could occur in the future. But I will ensure that everything is done to ensure that Parliament is not for sale, she said. Specifically, she criticized the fact that there were too many organizations whose funding was unclear and non-transparent. Action will be taken against this as well. At the last regular summit of the year, the heads of state and government of the EU countries cleared up a number of points of contention. At the end of a year marked by the Russian war against Ukraine, the 27 states thus maintained unity after a number of blockades and much effort. The agreements reached in Brussels on Thursday include the 9th package of sanctions against Russia and the agreement to adopt a European gas price cap this Monday. Another agreement gave Chancellor Olaf Scholz from Germany a rare moment of satisfaction. Unlike usual, this time not even a session until late at night was necessary. But I'll give you an overview of the decisions now. For months, Scholz has resisted politically setting a maximum price for gas because he sees security of supply at risk. The EU summit has now agreed that work on this will be completed at a meeting of energy ministers this Monday. However, Scholz hopes that the price cap will never take effect. He said, however, the price cap will be so high that I hope it will never become relevant, said Scholz after the summit. Under pressure from price cap advocates, the EU Commission proposed capping the price for gas sold at the TTF wholesale site at €275 per megawatt hour under certain circumstances. A lower limit of €180 to €220 is now under discussion. After Poland shed its last doubts about an important directive for the international minimum tax for large companies on Thursday, the formal decision for 4 decisions that had already been agreed on Monday was also made on the sidelines of the summit. The Czech EU Council presidency spoke of a mega deal. This includes withholding €6.3 billion from the EU budget for the time being due to insufficient anti-corruption measures. It is also about extensive EU aid for Ukraine, the Hungarian plan for using corona aid, and the directive for the international minimum tax. With a view to the minimum tax, the German Chancellor said after the summit, "We are now finally implementing a project close to my heart in Europe. This would be an important step for global tax justice." He had already campaigned for this agreement when he was finance minister under Angela Merkel. So he said, "Allow me a rare moment of satisfaction." And there's probably no topic that has occupied the heads of state and government as much this year as the Russian war against Ukraine and its effects. Shortly before the start of the war, the EU states had decided on the first package of sanctions intended to hit the Russian economy hard. On Thursday, the Committee of Permanent Representatives of the member states launched the decision for the 9th package. For example, punitive measures against Russian banks and additional trade restrictions are planned, but also adjustments that should enable uncomplicated Russian food and fertilizer exports to developing and emerging countries. And there was good news for Bosnia-Herzegovina at the summit. Following a decision by the heads of state and government, the country now belongs to the group of EU accession candidates. The reason for the decision is also the concern that the Balkan country with around 3.3 million inhabitants could otherwise orient itself towards Russia or China. After the summit, Chancellor Scholz emphasized that the government in Sarajevo still had a lot of work to do. It is clear to us that Bosnia-Herzegovina still has to implement substantial reforms before the concrete negotiations can begin, he said. Most recently, the EU officially named Ukraine and Moldova as candidate countries. How should the EU react to a US investment program worth billions that probably violates international trade rules? That was a topic there too. States will have to give an answer to this question in the coming year, and that shouldn't be easy. French President Emmanuel Macron spoke out on Thursday in favor of reacting with a European support program. if necessary, also disregarding trade rules. Scholz, on the other hand, made it clear that he expected concessions from the USA and was skeptical about a new European investment program. At the summit, it was agreed that Ursula von der Leyen's EU Commission should develop concrete proposals to protect Europe as a business location by the end of January. Von der Leyen had already spoken out in favor of a far-reaching reaction at the beginning of the month. She is touting additional money to promote clean technologies to be provided through a new so-called sovereignty fund. In addition, the President of the Commission wants to relax regulations for state investments. The US program provides for billions in investments in climate protection and social affairs. According to the EU Commission, this puts EU companies at a disadvantage compared to their US competitors. Subsidies and tax credits are linked, among other things, to the fact that companies use US products or produce them in the United States. And as I said, the Commission has presented proposals for a 9th package of sanctions against Russia. The High Representative and Vice President of the Commission, Josep Borrell, said that Putin is not only using hunger as a weapon, but now also winter. The 9th package of sanctions targets those critical to Russia's brutal war in Ukraine. The 8 packages of sanctions are already having a noticeable effect. The 9th package aims to further increase the package. And this 9th package of sanctions complements the EU's full ban on Russian oil imports by sea, which came into effect this week, as well as the global oil price cap agreed by the G7. Commission President von der Leyen reiterated, "International cohesion to face the Russian war has never been stronger. We are united and determined." The European Commission wants more independence, resources and powers for national equality bodies and has adopted 2 proposals. The recognition of parenthood should also be made easier within the EU. The Commission has submitted a proposal for a regulation on this. Equality bodies are central to helping victims of discrimination and ensuring that EU anti-discrimination rules are implemented on the ground. Helena Dalli, Commissioner for Equality Policy, pointed out that in a union of equality, strengthening equality bodies is key to preventing and eliminating discrimination. She said, "Our proposals will ensure that equality bodies become independent, receive the necessary resources, and act as centers of excellence on equality issues." Existing EU rules on equality bodies leave member states a wide discretion as to the structure and functioning of these bodies. For this reason, there are significant differences between member states, particularly in terms of the powers, independence, resources, accessibility, and effectiveness of equality bodies. The Commission therefore proposes a set of binding rules to strengthen the role and independence of equality bodies. The best interests and rights of children are at the heart of a proposal for a regulation harmonizing private international law on parenthood at EU level. One of the most important aspects of the proposal is that parenthood established in one EU member state should be recognized in all other member states without any special procedure. The EU has requested the World Trade Organization to set up WTO panels to settle 2 trade disputes with China. The first dispute concerns trade restrictions imposed by China in December 2021 on exports from Lithuania and on EU exports with Lithuanian ingredients. The second dispute concerns a measure taken by China to prevent European holders of high-tech patents from effectively protecting and enforcing their rights in EU courts. In both cases, the damage caused to European companies as a result of the measures imposed by China is enormous. An attempt by the EU to resolve the dispute through a consultation process was unsuccessful. The discriminatory Chinese measures against Lithuania affect trade and supply chains within the EU and have a negative impact on the functioning of the EU internal market, including through forced market adjustments. The lifting of these measures is in both the economic and strategic interests of the EU. Since December 2021, China has applied discriminatory and coercive measures against exports from Lithuania and, as I said, also EU goods with Lithuanian ingredients or parts. Accordingly, imports from Lithuania have been refused by Chinese customs authorities. Import restrictions have been imposed on multinationals using Lithuanian inputs, and Chinese exports to Lithuania have been reduced. Also, under the same measures, China unexpectedly banned all imports of alcohol, beef, dairy products, logs, and peat from Lithuania, citing phytosanitary reasons. China was asked for further clarifications, but could not show that these bans were justified. Chinese customs statistics show that trade between Lithuania and China fell by 80% between January and October 2022 compared to the previous year. By requesting the establishment of a WTO panel, the EU is defending its member state against China's discriminatory actions, which the EU considers to be in breach of the WTO rules. At the third ministerial meeting of the EU-US Trade and Technology Council, the two partners discussed, among other things, the US Inflation Reduction Act, the so-called IRA Act. The EU reiterated its serious concerns about the law's discriminatory provisions and the anti-competitive subsidies it envisages. The Council focused on overcoming global challenges. For example, the EU and the US signed an agreement on an early warning mechanism that can be used to work together on disruptions in the semiconductor supply chain. The co-chairs were Executive Vice President Margrethe Vestager and Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis for the EU Commission, and Secretary of State Antony Blinken for the United States, and Secretary of Commerce Gina Raimondo and Trade Representative Catherine Tay as well. The TTC is an important forum for deepening transatlantic cooperation, for trade facilitation, and for the development of global standards for technology and security. Geostrategic challenges such as Russia's unprovoked war of aggression against Ukraine make close coordination within the framework of the TTC even more important. Both sides took stock of the work of the EU-US Task Force on the Inflation Reduction Act, and the EU reiterated its serious concerns about the law. The TTC noted the preliminary progress, and the EU looks forward to a constructive US response to its concerns. As I said earlier in this video, otherwise they will implement own measures, but the plan will be, we know about the plan somewhat in January. And this concludes this week's magazine on the politics of the European Union. But you know, every day there's another magazine, so I'll see you in my next video. I'll be back.